My name is Emily Carter, and I have always believed that the past cannot harm us. The old stories about haunted houses and cursed lands were just that, stories. My husband, Michael, and I had been married for over 20 years, and we had always lived in a small but cozy house on the edge of town. Life was peaceful, uneventful, and filled with routines. That is, until the night when I felt a warmth behind me and knew with every trembling part of my body that it wasn't my husband. It all began when Michael and I moved into a larger house closer to the woods. We wanted a place with more privacy, a home where our children and grandchildren could come visit comfortably. The house was old, built sometime in the late 1800s, and had a charm about it: wooden floors, tall windows, and a wide porch that overlooked the forest. The neighbors, what few we had warned us that no family had stayed in that house longer than a year. People whispered about shadows, unexplained noises, and strange chills in the air. Michael laughed it off, brushing it aside as superstitious nonsense, and I agreed with him. After all, we were practical people. We didn't frighten easily, or so we thought. The first weeks passed peacefully enough. I spent my days unpacking, decorating, and making the house feel like ours. But little things started happening. I would set my keys down on the kitchen counter, only to find them hours later on the porch. I would hear footsteps upstairs when I knew Michael was outside mowing the lawn. Sometimes, late at night, I swore I could hear faint whispering in the hallway. Michael teased me about it, saying I was letting the creaks of an old house get into my head. And maybe he was right. But then came the night that changed everything. It was late, past midnight, and Michael had fallen asleep on his side of the bed. The air in the room was cool, and the curtains swayed gently as a breeze crept in from the window we had left cracked open. I lay awake, restless, staring at the ceiling. That was when I felt it, the distinct sensation of someone moving behind me. The mattress shifted slightly, as though another body had climbed into bed. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. At first, I thought it was Michael rolling over, but then I remembered, I was already facing Michael. He was in front of me, his chest rising and falling with deep, steady breaths. The warmth pressed against my back, unmistakably human. A slow, deliberate breath tickled the back of my neck. My heart pounded, every hair on my body standing on end. I wanted to scream, to run, to push myself away, but fear held me still. I slowly reached forward, shaking Michael's shoulder. He groaned, half asleep, and murmured, "What is it, Em?" Before I could answer, the warmth vanished. The bed was empty again, and the room was silent except for Michael's breathing. I didn't tell him what had just happened. How could I? He would only laugh or think I was dreaming. But I knew what I felt. Someone, or something, had been there with me. The next day, I tried to convince myself it had been a nightmare, just a trick of my restless mind. But the events that followed proved otherwise. Objects continued to move around the house. I would hear footsteps pacing the hallway at night. Sometimes, when I was alone in the living room, I would feel the air turn icy cold, so cold that my breath misted in front of me. Once, while washing dishes, I saw a reflection in the window above the sink. It wasn't mine. A tall figure stood behind me, just out of reach, but when I spun around, the kitchen was empty. Michael remained unconvinced. He said stress was making me imagine things. But then even he began to notice. One evening, while we sat in the living room watching television, the lights flickered and went out. The house plunged into darkness. I reached for Michael's hand, but before I could find it, the air grew heavy, suffocating. And then we both heard it, the slow sound of footsteps descending the stairs. "Is someone in the house?" Michael whispered. He grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the stairs, but when he shone the beam upward, the steps were empty. No one was there. The sound stopped. We searched the entire house that night, every corner, every room. But we found nothing. After that, Michael stopped laughing. He stopped making excuses. We both knew something was wrong with the house. The nights grew worse. I would wake to whispers circling the bed, words I couldn't understand, voices that didn't belong to anyone alive. Shadows darted across the walls, moving against the light. Doors slammed shut in the middle of the night, rattling the walls. And always, there was the presence behind me, the warmth, the breath on my neck, the feeling of something lying beside me when I knew Michael was on the other side. One night, desperate for answers, I went into the attic. It smelled of dust and mold, filled with old trunks and forgotten furniture. In the corner, I found a small wooden box, locked but brittle with age. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, was a diary. It belonged to a woman named Margaret Hayes, who had lived in the house in the early 1900s. Her words chilled me to the bone. She wrote about her husband, a cruel man who had locked her away in the house, forbidding her from leaving. She wrote about the loneliness, the silence, the endless nights of fear. And then the entries turned darker. She spoke of a shadow that visited her at night, a presence that lay beside her in bed when her husband was gone. She described it as warm but suffocating, tender yet terrifying. And then, her final entry stopped mid-sentence, as though she had been interrupted. I closed the diary with trembling hands. Margaret's torment had not ended with her death. It was still here, and it had chosen me. The following nights became unbearable. The presence grew bolder. I would feel hands brush against my skin, soft but cold. The whispers became louder, sometimes shouting directly into my ear. Michael, terrified now, suggested we leave, but the house seemed to have other plans. On the night we tried to pack, the doors locked themselves. No matter how hard we pulled, the front door refused to open. The windows rattled and shook as though something outside pressed against them. We were trapped. That night, as I lay in bed trembling, I felt it again, the warmth behind me. Only this time, Michael was holding me tightly in his arms. He was in front of me, his face pale and terrified, whispering, "Emily, do you feel that too?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. The breath against my neck grew stronger, heavier, until it felt as though the shadow itself pressed into me. I squeezed my eyes shut, silently praying, and in that moment, Michael shouted, "Leave us alone." The air exploded with sound, the windows shattering inward, glass flying across the room. And just like that, the warmth was gone. We left the house the very next morning, abandoning everything we owned. We didn't care. We just wanted to survive. The house still stands, silent and waiting for its next family. People in town still whisper about it, saying it is cursed. And I know they are right. Because sometimes, late at night, even in our new home miles away, I swear I still feel it, the warmth pressing against my back, the breath on my neck. And I know it isn't my husband.